Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Tahir Khalid. I'd like to welcome to our program on Sharjah TV, Youth Issues. In today's program, we want to talk about marriage. We get several inquiries from young people from time to time about different things in relationship to marriage. Young people who are thinking about marriage, young people who are married, young people who are not thinking about marriage. So we have a host of situations that we deal with in reference to dealing with particularly young people in this age-old institution. And unfortunately, in many places in the world today, it's failing. So people want to know, well, what should we do? Many of the young people that we talk to, they come from what we call broken homes. They've been raised by single parents, in most instances raised by their mothers. So of course, that hasn't left a great impression on them for whatever the reasons may be, that they've been raised without one parent or another. So the most important thing for us is why should we get married? What is Allah's relationship to this? If I don't get married, somebody says, well, if I don't get married, am I disobeying Allah? Is there anything wrong with not getting married? And a lot of times people think about it just in terms of guys. But subhanAllah, you know, today there's a lot of young women out there who say they don't want to get married. Or, like it used to be years ago, when I was young, they're saying, well, you know, I want to do my career first. And then when I get my career started and, you know, get engrossed in my profession, then I'll, you know, get married. This used to be the statement made by young men when I was young. But now we have young women who are saying the same thing. And of course, straight across the board, we're finding that young women are getting married older than they were previously. And even in this part of the world where people used to marry very early, there's not many places left where you see, for example, teenage marriages where young people, teenagers, get married because they want to get married. That's not so common today as years ago, particularly in the East and even in the Western world. Of course, maybe much longer ago, and the society was a much different society, but this was very common. So the world is changed and changing, but there are some things that we have to be careful of that should remain the same. And when we change those things, when we make effort to change those things, then what do we have? As we're seeing, an imbalance. And when that imbalance comes, then we have trouble, we have problems. And it doesn't mean that we won't have problems along the way. And for you young people out there, one thing that a lot of young people say, well, I don't want to get married because I don't want hassles. You know, my friend, he's married, and every day he comes home, him and his wife are arguing. I don't need that. Or vice versa. You know, a young woman says, you know, my friend, she got married. We used to be together all the time. We went to school together. We worked together. Now I don't see her anymore. And, you know, when she calls me, she's always upset. You know, you're married and you're supposed to be happy and having a good time. What's going on? What's happening with the people? So we want to talk pro. We're pro-marriage. First of all, for the people who say, what are you? Are you pro this? Or are you against this? Whatever it is, let's make it clear that everybody. We are pro-marriage. We are for marriage, and it is very clear for us. And it's a commandment from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in relationship to, He created Adam, and then He created who? He created Eve. For what purpose? And this is something, you know, that you put in a woman's face as an example, and some women say, listen, you're an extremist. What are you trying to say? That a woman was just created to serve a man, to be his footstool? No, we're not saying that. But it's very clear that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created Adam, and sometime later He created Eve as a partner for Adam, as a companion, as a balance in his life, to give him some comfort in this world. And of course, that comfort is equal, isn't it? That the man becomes a comfort for the woman, and the woman becomes a comfort for the man. Right? So we're talking about the basis of this heterosexual relationship and the importance of this balance. And in many instances, the way that people think today, for example, a lot of people says, Why do we have to have roles? I don't think we should have to have roles. I can do anything my husband can do. And surely my husband can do most of the things I can do. Of course, with some exceptions. They can't have children, they breastfeed, these kind of things like this as an example. But there are many things that he can do that I can. So why should I be the one who does these things? And similarly, a husband says, why should I have to take this responsibility and do so? My wife, she has better education than me. She makes more money than I do. So why should I have to take this responsibility when she makes more money than me? Why don't we just share all this money? We'll put our money together and we just share it, as an example. So there are many question marks and things, of course, that we hear people discussing on a regular basis. And of course, young people out there, sometimes they don't know what to think. They're saying, I hear all these things. I have friends are doing this. I look at a TV program and I hear Dr. Blankety Blank saying so-and-so, and I hear so-and-so saying so-and-so, and I'm confused. I'm confused. How do I go about this? What should I do? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Ar-Rum, verse number 21, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. And among his signs is that he created for you wives from among yourselves, that you may find repose in them. And he has put between you affection and mercy. Now, repose. What does repose mean? It means that you find some comfort, that you find some good in them. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made us what? Affectionate. And part of that affection is that we should show mercy, meaning that we should have concern about this person. And for example, none of us is perfect. There's no such thing as a perfect human being. When we see those imperfections, we shouldn't say, see, I told you, you like so-and-so and so. You men are like so-and-so. You women are like so-and-so, as an example, no. But those imperfections are there, and because we are affectionate and we're concerned about each other, that we should be patient with each other and endure. So as a young person, when you look at this negativity that people involved in or that you may witness, the people have left that. They have left this common understanding of being merciful to each other. So in many instances, on the negative side, people just kind of slash each other. The guy slashes the wife, and the wife slashes him, and then it goes back and forth. And then who was the perpetuator of this? The devil, Shaitan. He's the one who's pushing this. Why is this? Because the devil, he feels successful when he is breaking up or completely finished a family. What does that mean? When he has separated a husband and a wife. And it says on the end of this that when divorce is pronounced, that this something that is lawful, but it's something that Allah dislikes. It's so much so that it shakes the throne of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Think about this. First of all, we have to understand who is Allah, the creator and sustainer of all things, and understand that Allah doesn't like this. So the negativity, and I don't want to dwell on this too much, but the negativity that we're seeing in relationships today, we need to sit down and really try to resolve that negativity and come to the bottom of it and discuss, why are we being negative? What is it that is the ingredient between a husband and wife that makes that negative part? And unfortunately, that a lot of young people see and become afraid. This is, well, so-and-so, he was my best friend. So-and-so, he was my brother. So-and-so, she was my sister. She was my best friend. We were like this. And then she got married. We got far apart. And she's been unhappy ever since. He's been unhappy ever since. So we're talking about going back to what? The Prophet ﷺ, he said more or less, that a person, a believer, can marry for 4 things. But the best of them is piety. Piety. He can marry for beauty. A very high percentage of young men out there, they're saying, no, well, I really just want a girl who is, just very nice, but they're marrying for beauty. And it's lawful. But the thing you got to look at, okay, is she going to be beautiful 24/7? Is that real? I mean, if you're really into her beauty, Is she like that? And did you see her without her makeup, without her best clothes on, all these kind of things? Have you seen her like that, as an example? So beauty, in some respects, as we say, is in the eye of the beholder, but in many instances, today's world, a person can make themselves look beautiful, and when you see them in their natural state, that beauty that you perceive is not really there. So you need to understand about that, and that's just dealing with the beauty issue. You can marry for money. For example, you have, there's a young lady, she comes from a wealthy family, or she has her own wealth, as an example, and you could marry her for this. She says, well, you know, I'm wealthy, fine. You're not so wealthy, but it's not a problem for me. I like you, you know, we'll grow together. But also, this is not a good reason, because Islamically, her money is her money. It's not your money necessarily. You understand that? So it's not like, well, I'm marrying this queen, so I know I'm going to live like the king. No, that's not the criteria. Maybe she will say, fine, what is mine is yours, no problem, and we'll work like this. But you shouldn't expect that. So that shouldn't be the reason for you doing it, even though it's lawful, but you should be clear, and you shouldn't be deceptive. You shouldn't be deceptive. For example, there's a woman there, she's not attractive to you. You know she's very wealthy and no one pays attention to her. So you mislead her simply so that you can put your hands on her wealth. No, this is wrong. Family or status. A woman, she comes from a well-known family. Family has been established in a community or nation or whatever it might be. So a person figures, well, it's going to be beneficial to me and my career, as an example, to be married to this woman's family. This is lawful Islamically, but at the same time, we should be very careful. Are you just marrying that woman because of who her father is, or her grandfather is, her uncle is, or her mother is? As an example, is that what it is? Because you want to move up in the hierarchy of the society in which you're living, or another society, for fame, with the intention, hopefully, that through the fame I will get the fortune. This is not a good intention to get married. It is lawful, but again, we shouldn't be unscrupulous, meaning we shouldn't be the people who are just scheming and only using this young lady as a vehicle. And I'm saying lady because we are always concerned about protecting the women. But similarly for men, but of course, we expect a woman generally to be more dependent on her husband's ability to take care of her. But at the same time, you should be very careful. Just recently, we had dealt with a case where a woman told her husband that I only married you because my family insisted on it and because you had wealth, because you could take care of me. That's it. That's why I married you. I didn't really love you, as an example. So this happens in both ways. So we should be very careful about these other things. Piety. Piety, what does that mean? That means the belief in Allah, the submission to Allah. That this should be the common denominator in any marriage, and that's what you should be looking for. Male or female, you should be looking for a person who has the understanding of how he or she is going to practice as a husband or wife in accordance to the commandments of Allah. This is the most important thing. If a person is worried about pleasing Allah, you don't think they're going to make effort to please each other, that they're going to compromise on whatever the differences that they may have, that they're going to have concern for mercy for each other, just to obey the commandments of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And don't you think they're going to work together? Isn't this more likely? And if there is some problems, that they're going to try to work through those problems in the way which Allah has commanded them to do. And we find, of course, that this is the best reason. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Baqarah, verse number 228, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, and they, meaning the women, have rights over their husbands similar to those of their husbands over them, to what is reasonable. But men have a degree of responsibility over them, meaning that men have more responsibility in relationship to women, that the men are responsible for taking care of the women and the children, that this is a man's responsibility. He will be held accountable for this. The woman doesn't have that responsibility. So in preparing to get married, a young man should be, number one, ready for that responsibility. Number two, he should have the means, meaning that he should be able to provide food, clothing, and shelter for the woman that he chooses to marry. And he should be able to maintain her within the guideline or the criteria in which she was raised, or in the way in which she was raised. Now, in many instances, a young man, he will marry a woman who comes from a different strata in the society. Her life has been very different than his life. You can't force her to marry you, okay? Or like we say, con her to marry you. And you know that you can't provide for her the way that she's accustomed. You have to tell her and say, listen, you know, this is what I have to offer. I don't know what's going to happen in the future. I'm striving to do some other things, but I know your lifestyle is very different than mine. But can you accept what I have to offer? And this is what a young man should do, is save himself that trouble. He might love this woman, but her lifestyle is very different. Extremely difficult for her, for example, to live in one room. She's lived in a 20 room mansion, and now you want her to live in one room, as an example. That's very difficult, and it's an extraordinary woman who can do that. And she may have the best intentions, but it would be very difficult for her. And vice versa. Vice versa. A young man, he's been living a very high life, and then he's going to say, well, I'm going to change my lifestyle, and I'm just going to live this simple life like this. It's not very realistic, and very seldom is that going to be long-lasting. So the thing is to follow the middle course and do the things which are easy for you and for the woman of your choice. So we're talking about this woman, and we're talking about this man, this pious person we're looking at, right? So the first criteria that we're looking for is the people who believe in Allah. Now, we ask ourselves this today: how many people really are doing this? They're saying, first, I'm looking for someone who is a believer, practicing and obeying the commandments of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and in their marriage really wants to do this. There are not a lot of people like that. Not a lot of people out there today like this. So, but that should be where we're starting. And it doesn't mean that there isn't somebody out there for you young women out there, and for young men. It doesn't mean that. But the thing is, we have to take it to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the first thing we're looking for is a person who fears Allah, a person who is worried about his relationship with Allah. Number one. And we're going to go into the next program and we'll talk about some of the other things. Time goes very rapidly. We hope that young people are getting some benefit from this, and we look forward to seeing you here on future programs on Sharjah TV. My name is Tahir Khalid. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.